single sourcing.
And what do you say about that?
There are a lot of implications, including lack of fairness, lack of transparency, prone to corruption, may not attain value for money, and so on and so forth.
Especially when the single sourcing that they, on almost all occasions, choose to follow, they don't really abide by the regulation.
Right.
In most instances, we realize that the threshold is extremely high, and then even with that, they would not get approval as required.
Right.
Now, turn to page 8.
Yes, sorry, before you proceed. At page 6, they have stated and listed the documents they reviewed. And at the bottom of page 6, they restated the types of procurement methods that the council used. And it has indicated clearly they use RFQ, they use single source, and they use tenders. But if you go to page 7, in the 2 tables that are provided for by your review team, no indication of tender is reflected. So which means deliberately tenders were reviewed but are not reflected in the documents here.
It may also suggest that no tenders were reviewed.
But if no tenders were done, why would they now put it under the review as part of the documents they reviewed? 1. 2, why would they repeat it at the last paragraph that the type of procurement methods that the municipality used was RFQ, single source, and tenders?
I'm not very sure whether it is still part of the inconsistencies that we review, but I just want to also clarify that even RFQs are also termed as tenders. The offers are referred to as tenders.
No. Mr. Sanya, with all due respect, RSQ is very clear, single source is very clear, tenders are very clear. That is why you provide the type of tenders in your list. You identify them very clearly in your list. So if they are the same, you could have indicated, and in your explanation prior for us to understand the concepts, you did not say RFQ is also the same as tender.
It's not stated, but what I am saying is in procurement, quotations or offers are also tenders. I'm not saying that in this case is what prevails. And that is why initially I said it could be part of those inconsistencies, like the other inconsistencies that we observe in the other reports.
But is it possible to say that you reviewed a particular document when that was not availed to you?
We've observed a lot of inconsistencies in this thing. It's possible they may review, or the team may review. Of course, the authority may have reviewed.
Can you check for this report whether there were any tenders in the transactions for 2020 and 2021, just to confirm?
Okay, we will.
Thank you. Council, can you proceed?
Now, just for the record, on page 8, on the first point, it is outlined that the review covered all the transactions representing the population of transactions provided by the procuring organization as indicated above. Do you see that on page 8? That they are saying they reviewed all the transactions as outlined in the tables.
Yes, yes.
Now, let's examine on page 10 the organogram. what we have on page 10, the diagram, is that their organogram?
Yes.
And in the organogram, where do you see the procurement officer?
Under the Directorate of Finance.
Yes. So you have it directly answerable to the finance manager who is under the Director of Finance. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, in the findings, you said the team of reviewers realized that Kerawan Area Council do not have an organizational organogram, which shows the reporting line of the specialized procurement unit. What does that mean when you already confirmed that the diagram is the organogram?
Same inconsistencies observed, because already the organogram is provided. So if it is indicated in the write-up that it is not shown, then clearly it's not consistent.
And so, so the SPU, that is the Specialized Procurement Unit, is directly under the Director of Finance.
Correct.
Which we have mentioned time and again is really inappropriate.
Correct. Yes, they should be under directly.
Now, but then if you look at the compliance, 2.7.0, still on the same page. The second point seems to contradict the findings in relation to where the procurement officer is situated at. It says, we observe that the SPU is directly reports to the Chief Executive Officer. The SPU directly reports, I understand it should be, reports to the Chief Executive Officer. That will really be a departure from the initial findings.
Sure.
Now let's discuss briefly the functions of the accounting officer. We know the functions already, but then what was found on the ground in relation to the non-compliance requirements?
Under non-compliance, the review team was informed of the establishment of the contrast committee, but there is no evidence that the accounting officer appointed the contrast committee members formally and in writing. The CEO did not ensure that the minutes of the evaluation report on procurement deliberations are prepared and filed in each procurement transaction file as required by the Gambia Public Procurement Authority Act, or amended Act 2018, and its attendance regulation. The CEO did not appoint members of the inspection and acceptance committees as required by Gambia Public Procurement Regulation, Section 62, 63, 64, 66, but again, wrong citations.
Before Council comes in, under the compliance, that is 3.1.1, you have indicated that the CEO has ensured that the SPU prepare and send an annual procurement plan to GPP. Was that done? Has ensured, which means it was done. Bullet point 3.
The CEO has ensured that the SPU prepared and sent an annual procurement plan to the authority.
Yes.
We believe it is because
yes.
They must have confirmed it before.
Okay. So kindly provide us with that.
Okay. You are taking.
So, and kindly also provide us with the monthly reports on single source and request for quotation. And also the evidence that the CEO established the SPU as required by the Act. Thank you. Did you get those?
Yes.
Thank you. Council, you may proceed.
Now, we have discussed the non-compliance findings. with respect to the accounting officer. You may now turn to page 12 with respect to the findings or the management response. Do you see it?
Yes.
Now, I was just wondering, if you look at the management response, can you please read for us?
For the appointment of the Contracts Committee, the Chief Executive Officer, being the chairman of the committee, will write to that effect for the appointment of the committee, meaning they have accepted, but then...
Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. It is noted that the Chief Executive Officer will ensure that there will be a proper document proceeding and manage records in accordance with the Act.
Now, you may just stop there for a minute. You realize that in 2019, the review that we were just discussing prior, there were similar findings. In fact, the same findings when it comes to the non-compliance in relation to the accounting officer. But then the management response, you will find out it is strikingly similar. I will now read what we have in 2019. For the appointment of the Contracts Committee, the Chief Executive Officer, being the chairman of the committee, will write to the effect for the appointment of the committee, right? The first paragraph. You can now read the second and see. The second one.
Minutes of the Contracts Committee are all filed.
No, it is noted. Start from it is noted. The management response. The second one, second paragraph. It is noted that.
It is noted that the Chief Executive Officer will ensure that there will a proper document proceeding and manage records in accordance with the Act.
In 2092, the same thing. It is noted that the Chief Executive Officer will ensure that there will be a proper document proceedings and manage records in accordance with the Act. Do you see? You now have again the third paragraph in 2020. It is well not that the chief, first of all, it is really totally wrong the way they structure the sentence, but then the Chief Executive Officer will ensure that the appointment of the Inspection and Acceptance Committee is done as required by the Act. The same thing for 2020 verbatim. So my point is the response is just like a copy and paste. It's word for word. I don't know whether you see what I'm trying to point out. In 2019, the response from the management is word for word. The findings on the CEO's responsibilities and non-compliance issues are word for word. I don't know what you have to tell us regarding that, but then it's either the management is not taking you people seriously by just providing you with the same response, the one they gave you the previous years, verbatim, and just forward it to you guys, or the team that is reviewing this document is just copying and pasting even the management response.
I want to assume that it's management, the council's management, that provided a copy and paste version of the old report.
No, they will not copy and paste. So the management will now send you their response, and your team will prepare this report. So if there's a copy and paste, it will probably be your team.
What we normally do is the draft will be prepared with that table empty.
Yes.
And expect them to provide whatever response they have.
So they will fill it in and send it to you guys?
And send us the same report, not us typing what they have.
But that's my point. Even wherein someone is retyping, here you have it word for word.
That is why I said the management of the council may have copied and pasted the responses from the previous report.
That's fine, but then you will realize that that there is no progress in the point that the idea of having these compliance reviews being sent to these institutions is to make sure where they fall short, they improve on them if there is a chance to do that. But when you have even the responses being the same, you will realize that there is no intention of even improving on some of these findings. I'm not sure whether you see that.
Yes.
Now, for the functions of the SPU, the Caravan Area Council procurement staff and their qualification on page 13. You have Fatu Matajaite, procurement officer, GPPI certificate and diploma, ongoing training, none. Mamadou Lee, intern, was ongoing training, none. Now, the non-compliance in relation to the SPU, you have the SPU does not ensure GPPA Form 101 is administered and used. The SPU does not publish notices of awards. There was no evidence that the SPU had conducted periodical market surveys. We know that this is a prevailing trend when it comes to the execution of their functions. The SPU does not prepare contract documents. Now, the implications there, you said the award decisions could be biased and compromised. There's a risk that the wrong goods may be delivered and cannot be accountable. Failing to conduct periodic market research makes it difficult for the SPU to determine. Unreported procurements are imminent. Transparency of the procurement process could be compromised. Again, if you look at page 13, it's almost as well a copy, verbatim of what you have in 2019. Now, turn to page 14, please. Functions of the Contracts Committee. Are you there already?
Yes, yes.
Now, even the management response for the SPU, again, you will notice is also verbatim. It's the exact response for 2019, word for word. There are no changes when it comes to, apart from the font size. You will not see any changes in relation to the management response with respect to the SPU in their non-compliance findings. Do you follow?
Yes, I'm following.
Now, on page 14, the Contracts Committee members for the year under review. You have Samba Lee as CEO. Is that correct with the one you have?
Yes, correct.
Abdullah Khan, Finance Director.
Correct.
Faramana Jade, Procurement Clerk.
Correct.
Alasana Keita, Director.
Correct.
Alaji Pane, Councilor. Alaji K. Saho, Councilor. Alpha Khan, Councilor. Now this Alasan Keita, what is he? The Director of Finance, Director of what?
I'm not sure, because maybe if I can turn over to see the members of the Contracts Committee, because already there is a Director of Finance.
Exactly.
So I don't think Alasan Keita
now
is another director.
Now let's look at the non-compliance findings on page 14. What are the non-compliance findings?
the non-compliance, the contract committee was not formalized. The contract committee did not ensure GPPA Form 102 purchase order is signed by the supplier and council, and that is the contract document.
Okay.
The committee did not ensure that evaluation criteria are included in the solicitation document sent to potential suppliers for certain procurements, for example, request for quotation. The contract committee did not ensure that the approved threshold by management is adhered to.
So for 2020 and 2021, what will you say that the contracts committee complied with? It appears as if they didn't comply with anything. They didn't comply with any regulation, any law for that matter.
Yes, there are no compliance issues raised.
Exactly. In fact, just looking at the non-compliance findings alone, it tells you that, or let me say, I would have been very, very surprised to see that they have complied with any regulation, because this is really extensive. This is really all that they need to comply with, which they failed to first, they were not even appointed formally. So
Right.
you have a contracts committee, technically, that is supposed to perform the functions of a contracts committee as outlined by the Act and the regulations, but they are not even appointed formally. You understand?
Right.
And in addition to that, they do not abide by the required forms that needed to be filled and administered in relation to the procurement of any goods or services. And you see, you will not even find minutes of meetings of the contracts committee. No evaluation criteria are included in the solicitation document sent to potential suppliers. So how do they go about approving contracts then and awarding contracts?
Actually, if all these things are not provided, we just conclude that they are not compliant. They are not doing the right thing. So even if they should present something as an evaluation sort of responses, is not legal, is not correct.
Exactly. So now, what comes to mind is that all this procurement, to a large extent, or to a great extent, is being done verbally.
Correct.
So one may tend to wonder, how do they determine when to procure a certain item or certain goods or services? How do they come about agreeing to that and then approving verbally any transaction and making sure they are securing the funds for that purpose?
Council, I think if you can remember, on several occasions,
Yes.
I raised the fact that procurement is a process, starts somewhere and ends somewhere.
Yes.
At each of these stages requires some documentation.
Exactly.
And as an accounting officer, you must ensure that the documentation is correct before payment is effected. So if payment is being effected without correct documents, the conclusion is simple, that they are not complying and they are not going by what the law provides for.
Now,
Sorry.
yes.
Yes, looking at the findings, you have noted that 2020 and 2021, I just want to confirm, there are no compliance issues. That both 2020 and 2021, Caribbean Area Council did not comply with the Act and the regulation in any of their activities in procurement. Is that what the report is saying?
That is what the report suggests.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Now, yes. Now, on page 16, there is no disposal committee. Do you see that? On page 16.
Page 16. Yes, I have something like functions of the disposal committee.
Yes.
And under it, these are the findings.
Yes.
It is a requirement under the GPPA Amendment Act to establish a disposal committee to carry out disposal of obsolete materials in line with Section 58 to 63 of the GPPA Amendment Act. And the non-compliance, the Kerewan Area Council has not established the disposal committee as required by GPPA Amendment Act 2018, Section 60, 61, and so on.
Yes, so no disposal committee. Right. I am just trying to just highlight, because we have discussed this again, time and again. In 2019, it's the same thing. And we have gone in depth when it comes to the fact that they don't have a disposal committee. They don't have an examination and receipt committee, but I'm just going to highlight them for you. So it's the same findings. They didn't improve on this. So on page 17 again, examination and receipt committee did not exist.
Correct.
Is that not the case?
Yes.
Mr. Sanyang, we have noted that in some of your findings, you do indicate that some of these committees are not set up. Is it the reason why they are contained in the report? Is it they found that some activities were done and these requisite committees did not sit on it, or did they just look at the setup of the organization and knew that these committees are not there and they reported to that effect? So which one do we use to interpret this report?
Actually, some of the committees, they are not permanent. Some of the committees are not permanent, especially the disposal committee, for example.
Yes.
If there has not been any disposal, I don't think there is a need. There is not even a need to mention it.
Exactly my take. So which means they did not report on what was disposed. And that is why they mentioned that there is no disposal committee. And does this apply to all the other committees that are not permanent committees, which the report highlighted and did not refer to the activities that were supposedly carried out without that particular committee sitting?
Now, if they are mentioned as a non-compliance, I want to assume that an activity must have been conducted without the right committee.
So, but in these reports, you can note and you can confirm that they did not highlight any of those activities. Is that so?
Okay, we are not.
No, I said, is that what you noted also in the report?
That,
yes, what I'm saying is that in the report, throughout the reports of these councils, we can note that, for example, they would say an evaluation committee, and they will not tell you which of the tenders they fail to set up the evaluation committee. And like here, what made me ask the question is, why should they mention disposal committee when it's an ad hoc committee that you need to set up when the need arises? And no mention is made of the activity that was carried out. And this features in all of your reports. So I am saying the reports did not disclose most of these activities that were supposed to have been looked at by specific ad hoc committees to allow for them to make this kind of recommendation. Is that not the situation?
Yes, I think, yeah.
Is it or is it not?
Is it? It is.
Thank you. Okay, it's after 4. Council, I think that you are at page 70. Yes.
1-7.
Yes. I think this is a convenient point to stop.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. We may close for the day, and we will reconvene tomorrow morning, and we may rise.